of the Voice of Nigeria, VON, Osita Okechukwu, on Sunday urged President Bola Tinubu's National Assembly and state governors to adopt the Uwais report. Okechukwu said they will muster the political will to use the Uwais handgun to deepen Nigeria's democracy and catapult it to grand status. In a statement he signed, the founding member of the All Progressive Congress said there will be no genuine electoral reforms without the Uwais report. And the critical amendment will make sure INEC and SEC are truly independent and will ensure the highest quality and highest standards of our general elections. Joining us now on the show as we take a look at the adoption of the Uwais report is Senator Okechukwu, former Director General of Voice of Nigeria. Great to have you on the show. But sir, with due respect, I think you should not come here and be discussing this subject matter today. Honestly, I think you should never have come here to discuss this. And I'll tell you why. This was you, leading up to the election, that came here consistently, that told us that some of the adoption of the Uwais report by INEC was a vote-rigging vaccine for the last election. You constantly said, oh, President Buhari was going to deliver very good elections because they had the vote-rigging vaccine. But we had an election that was mad in jeopardy. We had technical glitch in the presidential election, which a lot of people still look at with a lot of disdain. And we had massive irregularities across board in every part of the country. So the same you that preached a vote-rigging vaccine to us, what vaccine are you going to preach this time with the Uwais reports? Nigerian saving vaccine? Votes, abolition vaccine? Which kind of vaccine? Morning, sir.
Thank you, Incisive Rufai.
Bless you, sir, as always.
Good morning, Dr. Ruby, and good morning, Sister Vimbai, and their audience worldwide. May I also commend your medium for the honor you bestow to Nigerian women. I'm one of those who are praying that in my lifetime we shall have a woman president in Nigeria. So if people did so well by promoting our women folk, keep the flag flying along that line. On your question, my brother Rufai, you are very correct. That was why I said there is a missing link. That our National Assembly, led by distinguished Senator Jibrin Barrow, Right Honorable Benjamin Carlo, and others that made contribution to constitutional electoral reform, like my friend, distinguished Senator Salis Mustafa, and my brother Ikenga Ugochiyere, and others, that they did so well. As you said, that there's a missing link, and that missing link is in the Uwais electoral reform report. For me, the Uwais report is divine inspired. 17 years down the line, that missing link had not been, that bolt is still missing in the mix. And you can imagine how Nigeria is so blessed that the President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua of blessed memory was elected. And on his own volition, he told the world that the electoral process that brought him to power was flawed. And less than 3 months after his inauguration, he set up the 22-man Uwais Electoral Reform Committee. And that committee, among various recommendations, what I've discovered along the line that there's one missing link. And that missing link is in section 22.414142. What is he saying? That in the composition of the board of INEC, that they discover that there's lack of proper, true independence. We are human beings. If Osita Okechukwu, as a human being who is also selfish, it becomes a mandate to appoint chairman of electoral commission, appoint national electoral commissioners, resident electoral commissioners, electoral officers. If you are not patriotic enough to look back at that report you will miss that missing link. That missing link says that all those essential offices, National Electoral Commissioner, Chairman, President, should all be advertised so that the general public will know those who had indicated interest they want to be chairman or National Electoral Commission or resident electoral commissioners. And I'm adding the state INEC, because the state INEC have become an albatross. So what is the missing link? It says if there's an advertisement and a collation is done and a shortlistment is done, that 3 out of all the aspirants or those who indicated interest should be shortlisted per office and sent to the National Council of States, where we have all the governors, former president, this and that. For them, out of the 3 nominated for each, should select one and send to the Senate. I think in the absence of the fact that we do not have the powers to go to Almighty God in heaven and tell him, our Lord, please give us good Nigerians who are in heaven, we must do with those in Nigeria. So to do with those alive, I think that that particular single item is a handgun that I'm appealing to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the leadership of the National Assembly and the state assemblies, that in an effort to amend the Constitution and advance a genuine electoral reform, that item should be included. And I'm one of those, out of the defunct Congress of Progressive Change of the APC, who had, majority of us, have remain with Tinubu in APC. And we're telling Mr. President, it is in your own interest that you should do this legacy. Don't be afraid. He will lose the election because of that. Rather, you promote a political culture of free, fair, and transparent election that will lead to Nigeria's development.
Thank you so much for that great foundation to this conversation. Now, one of the things that struck me in your statement is that you made reference to having to implement some of these recommendations, as you've already painted out. And you're saying it's important to do so that the June 12th election can become a second place, meaning so that we can have what we can refer to as the most democratic election. But you also specifically mentioned Professor Humphrey Nwosu in that statement. And of course, we know the conversation that has been happening around him thus far. And what people are saying that if you do not declare an election, it means you did not complete it. And there's so many angles to look at it. And I'd just like to know your thoughts, specifically because you added his name to this statement endorsing free and fair election. What's your take on the discuss that's happening around him?
Thank you, Sister Vimba. The matter has been settled by your team. I've listened to you people while the debate was going on, and anything short of hypocrisy is, for on one hand, to celebrate MKO Abiola, and even Ambassador Kingibe, who actually did not fight that war, and you leave the man that conducted the election. It's a matter of hypocrisy. It is accepted that that election remains the freest in the annals of Nigeria electoral process. And I'm saying that in the addition to the vote rigging machine I talked about, whereby we spent over 300 billion naira to procure technology, and we miss the point that the managers of the system must be independent, impartial, that they should not owe allegiance to those who appointed them. That if they were independent, they will conduct an election that will be freer than the one was conducted. I mentioned was for the fact that I was in Abuja at that time. I know the pressure that mounted against him and his team not to conduct the election. Not to conduct the election. So anybody who dismisses it with a wave of hand that to conduct that election was an easy joke, will not forget somebody like late Francis Sutton Zeribe and Abimbola and the late Attorney General of the Federation, Clement Akpambo, that was behind the scene and moved Justice Ikpeme to give a judgment against the decree with the decree's ouster clause that no court judgment should stop this election. And that judgment was delivered on the 10th of June, 1993. Between that 10th of June, Wosu was harangued not to hold the election on the 12th. He insisted on holding that election. That's why I mentioned his name. I'm not mentioning his name on the issue of whether he was my teacher or whether he's from my clan. I don't depend on clan. I'm talking of the good of the country. I'm saying that President Tinubu had done some legacy policies, one of which is the financial autonomy of the local government councils and the regional development intervention commissions. And if you want those two items to succeed, he must lay a foundation between now and 2007 for a free, fair, and transparent election political culture. Because if you don't have a free and fair election, the financial autonomy of the local government will collapse at the end of the day. Because the governors will do their usual style and nominate their stooges as councillors and chairmen of councils. And if you do so, the idea of the financial autonomy that President Tinubu and his Attorney General, Lateef Fagbemi, found an alternative means to give the country. With the grace of the Supreme Court, my Lord Justice at the Supreme Court, will wither away. So will be the development commissions and other development strides. It was Mandela that said, if Nigeria is not respected, Africa will not be respected. How can we be respected when we are under a flawed democracy? How free and fair election is not on the cards? How 93.something million people registered to vote in 2023 and less than 30 million voted? Is it not a lack of confidence on the electoral process? That's my fear. And I think we can get over it and place Nigeria where the world will recognize us and where the foreign direct investment will come unhindered. Because no group ever invests where they have no confidence in the system. That is my canvas. Rufai, I'm not saying that the votes rigging vaccine is not there. I just need a supplement to make it work so that nobody will talk of glitch anymore in an election.
Okay, Mr. Okechukwu, you have isolated one of the many recommendations of the UWIS panel, namely, the fact that the president should not be given the power to appoint whoever is going to be chairman of INEC, and that should pass through the Council of State. But that panel made some other recommendations. What do you think of those other recommendations? Like 1, independent candidature. Like 2, that nobody should assume any political office to govern until all legal disputes have been resolved. And then 3, that there should be a political parties registration and regulatory body to oversee, the political parties. These are some of the other recommendations. But the lawmakers that you mentioned, at the beginning of this conversation, they are even saying that elections should be held in one day all over the Federation instead of having staggered elections. What are your thoughts on these other recommendations? Or you think these other recommendations are not as important as the independence of the body? And how do you think that process itself can even guarantee the independence that you seek?
Thank you, Dr. Ruby. Let me repeat once more that section 2241 did not give the president the right to nominate chairman of National Electoral Commission or the governor to nominate SEC. Rather, what he said is that it should be publicly advertised.
No, I understand all of that.
To the general public.
No, please. I understand all of that, Mr. Okechukwu.
I'm
talking about other issues.
I'm coming.
Beyond that one. Yeah, go ahead.
Those other... Can I tell you one of the features why they said the June 12th presidential election is the freest? It's because there was no legal matter after the election. If you do a transparent election, free, fair, beyond doubt, the Nigerian people are good followers. You might not have any legal tangle. You might not have the need for Electoral Offences Commission or all those niceties. This is central. It's central to erasing the negative mindset we have about the electoral process. The lack of trust is going to consolidate the voters' premium. You as a president will know that you must do well, otherwise the voters have the powers to vote you out. You as a governor, at the back of your mind, will be the fact, no matter whoever is advising you, you'll be aware that the voters have a premium on deciding by their votes. What we have today is not the same thing. That's 103 million registered. In case they require the papers from me to secure a job or do something, let me register for God's sake. On the election day, you tell him to come. You say, why should I go when it will not be free and fair? That's what I'm saying. Those other issues are very germane. But the most central is the fact that a president, a governor, is aware that he didn't appoint Dr. Ruby in that 22-man panel, for God's sake. What are the outcomes? Don't forget, like the funding of the Electoral Commission was selected. It's still in place. But what are the outcomes? Is that somebody like Professor Tauri, who was a member of the committee, became a chairman of INEC. And his election, at the end of the day, will also be rated as one of the freest. So I'm saying that there's a human angle. The Nigerian voter had no premium. We need to give them premium.
Okay, sir.
So that they will appreciate the weight of the voter's card.
Okay, sir. So a couple of things.
Please go ahead.
A lot of things you have said are debatable in hindsight. Number one, you said one of the freest elections, President Jega held. I have had a chance to go over those election results. Those results were also heavily inflated. It's just that there was a consensus about President Goodluck Jonathan then saying, I don't want court problems. He conceded. I think what really made that election was President Goodluck Jonathan conceding. It wasn't that the elections were free. There were allegations of voters padding, numbers padding and everything across both political parties. There were some results of some states that were heavily contested. I think the PDP contested the results of Kano, and the results of Rivers was contested by the APC. Those were very irregular results. In fact, President Tairi Jega had announced it on the floor while they were collecting the results. So across board, there was still a lot of election shenanigans. But my point to you is this, sir. This your voters rigging vaccine that you said Beavers was going to fix. The bulk of the waste reports had been implemented with those reforms in INEC. The only, take for instance, it was a waste report that talked about deploying NYSC corps members as officers of the elections. It was pretty much implemented. The only part is the nomination part, who nominates, where they talked about the consensus of both political parties and as regards, getting who becomes the leader of INEC. The most important part is the electioneering process, the counting and accountability, which we thought we had before the last election, but turned out to be flawed when we practiced the election. So that's why I asked you the question at first. It's not about the waste report any longer. It's about the sanctity of INEC itself. Like, you get both parties to get who is going to be INEC chairman. If they will still corrupt him, they will still corrupt him. How can we get the sanctity of the institution of INEC? That's the question here. It's not about the waste report. It's about the sanctity of INEC as an institution.
Thank you very much, Rufai. If you talk about the Jagas election, could you, on a pragmatic analysis, compare it to the Iwu's election of 2007 or 2003? You can't. We are trying to compare what happened, not the ideal of the utmost 100%. We're human beings. But on this issue, the US Electoral Reform Committee said we discovered the lack of independence of the managers of the process led to deficiency. And that it cannot be truly and genuinely be called independent when Okechukwu handpicks the electoral commissioners. That's human element. I know that it might not be 100% after shortlisting and the rest, but there will be some maggots that will be cut off. And it is a point of improvement of one, the standard and quality of our elections. The confidence of the people on the elections that will reduce apathy. Because the people have lost confidence. When they called us in the defunct CPC, that we are going to lift Tinubu, that is not so fair to us, this and that. And we asked them, do you have any program that could genuinely advance Nigerian democracy? Are you just walking away because you are not appointed or you don't have access? And we said, if it's about access, we won't go with you. Let us plead with Mr. President to look inwards and improve our electoral process now that the issue of constitutional electoral reform is going on. And I said that one of those items is to divorce the loyalty of the appointees from those appointed. Whether they are bribed later will become a different matter, but reduce that chances of inducement. There's an election going on in Wisconsin. There's an election going on in Florida.
Yes.
Elon Musk is sharing dollars. And the people are resisting it because they know that their votes had a premium.
That's it.
That premium is what I'm looking for.
Mr. Osita Okechukwu, it's always such a